16. James Dylan Harris. In early 2021, narcotics detectives in Nash County, North Carolina tried pulling 26-year-old James Dylan Harris, who was wanted on several warrants, over. Harris slowed down at first as if he was about to pull to the side of the road, then suddenly stepped on the gas and drove away quickly with 2 passengers in the vehicle with him. As police officers chased after him, he crossed over into the opposite lanes of the highway and kept driving in the wrong direction, reaching speeds between 80 and 95 miles per hour. The dangerous pursuit ended when Harris crashed into a tree, seriously injuring himself and both passengers, including a pregnant woman who later lost her unborn child. Because of this, authorities charged him with murder of an unborn child, careless and reckless driving, eluding arrest, and serious injury by vehicle. At the time of the crash itself, Harris was out on pre-trial release for an unrelated criminal case. In a plea agreement to settle both cases, he pleaded guilty to eluding arrest with a motor vehicle, felony serious injury by vehicle, felony larceny, and felony obtaining property by false pretense. The murder charge was ultimately dropped, and he was sentenced to 3.5 to 4 years and 11 months in prison, all for not pulling over. 15. Alejandro Canchola. During one morning in April 2022, a suspected drunk driver fled during an attempted traffic stop in California. The pursuit trailed into the neighboring city of Rialto, where the suspect, 24-year-old Alejandro Canchola, drove straight through residential streets at deadly high speeds. He ran a red light and smashed into another car, killing 31-year-old Aaron McDonald and his fiancée, 30-year-old Irene Jaramillo, in the process. The 2 victims were planning a summer wedding and were on their way home after celebrating Irene's birthday when their lives and dreams were suddenly ripped out from under them. After crashing into the innocent couple's car, Canchola lost control of his vehicle and swerved into a nearby home. The pursuit came to a close, and the suspect was taken to the hospital with light injuries. He was charged with murder, evading police, and DUI, and is still behind bars on $2 million bail. Instead of watching Aaron and Irene exchange their vows as they entered a new and exciting chapter of their lives, the couple's family and friends attended their funeral and watched as they were laid to rest together for eternity. 14. Adam Nolan. When a 27-year-old mother of 2 named Tia Randall was fatally shot in her Wyoming, Michigan home back in 2018, suspicion immediately fell on her boyfriend, 33-year-old Adam Nolan. He left the scene before Tia's body was located and was later spotted in his truck. Police chased after him along a highway into Grand Rapids, where he crashed his car. Nolan then got out of the truck and decided to open fire on law enforcement. The shooting stopped when a police cruiser hit him from behind, causing serious injuries. Thankfully, no officers were injured. He was arraigned at his hospital bed on charges of assault with the intent to murder, fleeing and eluding police, and more. Authorities also charged him with open murder after their investigation into Tia Randall's death pointed in his direction. The court convicted Nolan on every count, including first-degree murder, and sentenced him to life in prison without possibility of parole. He also received concurrent terms totaling between 19 and 50 years for 2 counts of trying to kill police officers. It was revealed at trial that Nolan took Randall's life because she was romantically interested in a co-worker at his workplace. Nolan's attorney claimed that his client snapped during a brief moment of anger and argued for a conviction on a lesser charge of second-degree murder, but the outcome of the case speaks for itself. 13. John Manek. After getting arrested in the United States on dozens of serious criminal allegations back in 2014, an elderly millionaire and accused pedophile named John Manek posted bail and got out of jail before fleeing to southern France. American authorities unsuccessfully tried to get him extradited from France multiple times over the years, while he hung out in a literal medieval castle that he owned, Chateau Petrigal. They finally caught Manek in 2020 after tracking him down in the Dominican Republic. After being extradited back to the States, Manek was held at the Indian River County Jail Facility in Florida. His lawyers failed to get him released based on a medical condition thanks to the obvious fact that he's a flight risk, but he was unwilling to accept the judge's final decision. Manek quickly got to work hatching an escape plan so he could flee back to his French castle. In early 2023, someone contacted detectives from outside the jail with an anonymous tip about the scheme, and an investigation was instantly launched. The findings revealed that Manek planned to go on a doctor's visit and have some people on the outside pepper spray the officers escorting him outside the medical facility. From there, they would take Manek to his private plane and he would travel onward to France. Investigators listened to jailhouse phone calls and discovered that Manek was talking in code to his associates about the escape plan, which he referred to simply as a paint job. In preparation for the intricate scheme, he paid a fellow inmate's bail so he could help get things ready for him on the outside. He let the inmate live at his home, where they packed up his luggage for him, making sure to include a bottle of his favorite alcohol. Manek also arranged for his employees to prepare his 140-foot yacht and even a utility van. He also planned to purchase vehicles specifically for carrying out the escape plan. Thankfully, the whole thing was foiled, and Manek now faces an attempted escape charge on top of the 49 counts related to his original case. 2 inmates and 2 of his employees were also charged in connection to the plot. Escapes from jail are hardly ever successful. Even if an inmate manages to reach the outside, they're usually captured within a few days and returned to custody. But the enormous amount of resources Manek has at his fingertips meant that the plot may have actually been successful if someone hadn't tipped off the sheriff's department. It's scary what you can do when you're rich. 12. Deadly dash for freedom. North Korea is the only country in the world that forbids the majority of its citizens from leaving its border. In almost all cases, the only way to leave the Hermit Kingdom is to make a dangerous escape, which requires sneaking across the heavily patrolled border into either China or South Korea. Leaving the country has gotten increasingly difficult over recent years. Since coming into power after his father's death in 2011, current dictator Kim Jong-un has tightened up border security and imposed harsher punishments against people who are caught trying to cross territorial lines. Those who attempt to leave are usually either imprisoned at a labor camp, where the conditions are filthy and practically torturous, or straight up executed. To discourage citizens from trying to leave, a defector's relatives are also severely punished, even if they had nothing to do with the escape attempt. During the COVID-19 pandemic, North Korea's border security became even stricter when Kim Jong-un called for a national quarantine. In May 2020, sources told Radio Free Asia that a couple from Riahi province were killed for trying to escape. The pair were reportedly attempting to cross into China with their teenage nephew, with plans to reunite with the boy's father who lived in South Korea. Their escape was put to rest by border guards, according to the source, who said that the couple were tortured into admitting their illegal plans. They said that their nephew's father asked them to bring his son to him after he escaped from the country. While the teenager was spared from execution, the couple was reportedly shot on sight. The interviewee who reported the information told RFR that the family would have had a better shot at actually escaping North Korea if COVID-19 security measures weren't in place. According to another source, the almost immediate decision to kill the couple seemed harsh even to other North Korean citizens, who know what to expect if they get caught trying to defect. The source claimed that the news has contributed to growing anger among civilians about how they're being treated by law enforcement in the north. Even before the pandemic began, a vast majority of the country's citizens lived in abject poverty. After the pandemic, it became even harder to simply make ends meet. Unfortunately, Kim Jong-un has no future plans to loosen up North Korea's border restrictions or to curb the rampant human rights abuses that are known to happen in the country. 11. Wesley Anderson. In July 2023, 42-year-old Wesley Anderson was taken into custody on multiple arrest warrants in Park Ridge, Illinois. While moving him to the local jail, officers noticed that he was acting strangely and that he slipped his cuffed hands from behind his back to the front of his body. His behavior got so out of control that the officers had to pull up over an interstate and request backup. As the cops tried to re-secure Anderson in his restraints, he broke free from his handcuffs and escaped. An officer tased him as he ran away, but it failed to stop him from leaving on foot. He ran across the highway's northbound lanes, jumped over a concrete barrier, and went up to a van that stopped in the southbound lanes. According to police, he then assaulted the driver and stole the vehicle. After a short chase, Anderson ditched the van and carjacked a faster Camaro. Using the owner's OnStar service, law enforcement found the car in Kenosha County, Wisconsin. During the high-speed chase that ensued, Anderson drove into the opposite traffic lanes to avoid spike strips that were laid out, but police eventually were able to successfully disable the vehicle. Officers ordered the detainee out of the car at gunpoint and took him into custody without further struggle. While being transported to a hospital later that night for medical clearance, Anderson once again tried to escape by overpowering two deputies. The officers managed to maintain control of him though, and Anderson was quickly taken back to jail. In addition to the warrants he was picked up on, he was charged with attempting to disarm a peace officer, reckless endangering safety, vehicle operator fleeing to elude an officer, operating a vehicle without consent, as well as battery to a law enforcement officer. This isn't Anderson's first time brushing up with the law. In 2019, he shot his own pet dog in the head and was convicted of a weapons charge and violating the duties of an animal owner. If that doesn't tell you what kind of person he is, then we don't know what will. Anderson's current case is ongoing. 10. Conception boat fire. On September 2, 2019, a 75-foot dive boat called the MV Conception caught on fire in the waters off the coast of Santa Cruz Island, California. 33 passengers and one crew member were asleep below deck when the flames broke out shortly after 3 o'clock that morning. 5 crew members who were sleeping up on the top deck reported the incident to the Coast Guard and tried to alert the 34 people below to the fire. But the rapidly spreading flames stopped them from reaching the lower levels and forced them to jump overboard before they could do anything more to save their shipmates. The boat's captain, Jerry Boylan, even tried to get back on the burning vessel, but the fire was already too big. Using the Conception skiff, the 5 surviving crew members navigated to a nearby boat and another distress call was made. Unfortunately, all 34 of the boat's remaining occupants were killed. Investigators initially reported that the victims all died from smoke inhalation. It was a small comfort to know that many, if not all of them, likely died in their sleep. But this finding was challenged by the fact that some victims were found wearing shoes, which wouldn't have been the case if they were still sleeping. The theory about the victims dying in their sleep was ultimately disproved in 2022, when a video clip from a victim's damaged cell phone showed smoke seeping into the shared sleeping area. A man who lost his sister in the flames and saw the recovered footage told the Los Angeles Times that the boat's fire alarm was blaring as smoke poured in from the stairway above. He said the people were walking around in search of another exit and that they seemed relatively calm at the time despite the obvious danger. Someone could even be heard saying, "Hey, there's gotta be another way out of here." The video is the only known evidence of the passengers' reaction to the deadly fire. At the time it was recorded, they seemed unaware that they were in a life-threatening situation, but they had to have known that they had to get off the Conception quickly and were actively trying to do so. Sadly, they must have realized at some point that they were going to die that night, making the outcome of this tragedy even more heartbreaking for their family members. The sinking of the Conception was California's worst maritime disaster in over 150 years, and the worst disaster of its kind in the US since 1989. It was also the country's deadliest transportation-related disaster since the Colgan Air Flight 3407 crash, which happened near Buffalo in 2009. 9. Suleiman Altaf. A British man who's currently standing accused of stabbing his estranged wife and her son apparently decided it was worth risking death to avoid prison when he tried to leave the country in a small dinghy. 45-year-old Suleiman Altaf was the prime suspect in the 2022 knife attack case, which left his ex injured and her son dead. He was discovered in the English Channel by a lifeboat crew after they received multiple reports of the drifting boat. Measuring 149 miles across at its widest point and 20.5 miles at its narrowest, the English Channel is known for having incredibly rough waters. Even in the most favorable conditions, crossing it in a small boat is extremely dangerous and comes with a high risk of drowning. Most people wouldn't dare to cross it, especially without the necessary boating skills. Suleiman was luckily uninjured when the lifeboat crew found him, but it took them over an hour to persuade him to let them rescue him, since that meant being taken back to Britain and facing serious murder charges in court. He told investigators that he planned to sail to France before moving onward to Portugal. Authorities charged Suleiman with murder, attempted murder, and having a knife in a public place. He's since denied all 3 charges, and the case is still ongoing. 8. Elizabeth Holmes. At the height of her career, Elizabeth Holmes was named the youngest self-made billionaire in the United States by Forbes. After dropping out of college, she grew her fortune by claiming she invented technology capable of diagnosing 240 diseases with just a single drop of a patient's blood. Developed under her now-defunct biotech company Theranos, she called the device the Edison, or the Mini Lab. In 2015, the company's value was estimated at about $9 billion. A lot of the money came from wealthy investors who were sold on Elizabeth's outlandish claims of pioneering a device that would bring massive changes in the medical world. Elizabeth's fame peaked with her recognition by Forbes, but it was soon followed by a swift fall from grace. By then, former employees turned whistleblowers had started contacting law enforcement with claims that Elizabeth was lying about the potential and actual capabilities the Edison machine had. An investigation revealed that Theranos was not using the device to test single drops of patients' blood, as they claimed, but that much larger samples were required to be taken before being outsourced to other labs for testing. In 2018, Holmes was charged with lying to investors through false or exaggerated claims in what the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) described as massive fraud. She had to pay a $500,000 fine, relinquished her voting powers in Theranos, and was banned from serving as an officer or director of a public company for at least 10 years. But it wasn't long before she wound up back in a courtroom, right next to her ex-lover and former Theranos COO Ramesh Sunny Balwani, when the pair were indicted on 9 counts of wire fraud. In early 2022, Holmes was convicted of defrauding investors. Just a few weeks later, she bought a one-way ticket to Mexico while out on bail and still awaiting sentencing. After realizing her plans to leave the country, authorities canceled the ticket to her flight. Prosecutors cited the incident as obvious proof Holmes was a flight risk and begged the judge to lock her up for the rest of her court proceedings. But she stayed free, while she spent the next year using every legal maneuver possible to avoid starting the 11-year prison sentence given to her. While Holmes used every stall tactic in the book, some people were surprised when she didn't make another escape attempt. She finally went to prison at the end of May 2023. According to a recent update, she's already on track to get released 2 years early thanks to good behavior. 7. Delmario Smith. In 2021, after being convicted in a drive-by shooting in St. Paul, Minnesota, 21-year-old Delmario Lavelle Smith apparently hoped for more leniency from the judge than he was given. When he realized during his sentencing hearing that he would actually be spending the next 4 years behind bars, he became visibly upset. Just moments later, as he was about to get escorted back to his jail cell, he bolted out of the courtroom and tried to make a run for it. Smith's last-ditch attempt at freedom was foiled when he stupidly mistook a closet door for an exit, giving deputies the prime opportunity to capture him. But he wasn't going to give up that easily. As the deputies tried to subdue Smith, he kicked, flailed, and resisted being taken back into custody. He kept refusing to cooperate, even after more officers came over to help and even after they threatened to tase him. While the police were transporting Smith to the court security office, they noticed a cut on his forehead and called for medical attention. As they waited, Smith suddenly blurted out, "You would do the same thing if you just got 48 months." According to a criminal complaint, He then went on to say something like, "I didn't even do anything wrong. Just because I didn't want to do my 48 months, who cares?" Smith received medical help for his laceration, and the deputies involved only suffered minor injuries. The disgruntled convict was charged with 1 count of attempted escape from custody and 3 counts of 4th-degree assault on a peace officer on top of his prior charges. In the event of a conviction, it would mean that he would most likely have additional time tacked on to the 48 months he desperately tried to avoid. 6. Darlene Wilder. When law enforcement in Bell County, Kentucky went to the home of 47-year-old Darlene Wilder to serve a home arrest warrant in July 2023, her boyfriend answered the front door. He said that Darlene was inside the home and let the deputies inside. Before going in, they announced their presence, and Darlene allegedly took off running through the home. According to the authorities, she swung a bat at one of the officers and then tried to hide in a bedroom. Both deputies ordered Darlene to put down the weapon, but she refused, so they had to taser her. As they handcuffed the suspect, she tried to assault them further, but they managed to subdue her and place her in a police cruiser. While one of the deputies talked to Darlene's boyfriend, she crawled out the window of the patrol vehicle and tried to escape while still handcuffed. Law enforcement immediately stopped the attempt and put her back inside the cruiser. In addition to the charges relating to the arrest warrants, which include felony probation violation and failure to appear, Darlene now faces extra charges of resisting arrest, menacing, assault on a police officer, and escape. Bell County Jail records show that she's now being held on a $10,000 bond. 5. Orlando Mitchell. In July 2023, Marion County, Indiana Deputy John Durham was transporting an inmate back to jail after a hospital visit when the prisoner suddenly managed to gain control of the van. The vehicle had just arrived at the detention center when Orlando Mitchell allegedly stepped out of the car and used his handcuff chain to break Durham's neck. According to court records, the suspect then stole the van and crashed it in the process of trying to escape. Deputy Durham passed away from his injuries, and Mitchell now faces a murder charge in addition to his prior convictions. When the incident happened, Mitchell was already facing a murder charge for shooting his child's mother to death outside a daycare back in 2022. He was being held in connection to that case when he killed Durham. The prosecution is now seeking the death penalty for the more recent murder. Attorney Jeff Mendez, who isn't involved in the case but went to Mitchell's initial court appearance, told Fox 59 that because Durham's murder was completely caught on camera, future proceedings will probably not focus on whether Mitchell actually committed the crime, but on whether or not he should be spared from the death penalty. Even if Mitchell is convicted of Durham's murder and sentenced to death, it wouldn't be a quick journey to the execution table. Mendez estimated that the appeals process would take anywhere from 7 to 10 years before an execution date could be set. While the victim's loved ones are probably dying to see justice served, at the very least, Mitchell has a lot of time to reflect on what he's done as his cases work their way through the legal system. 4. Lisa Michelle Riahi. In July 2023, 49-year-old Lisa Michelle Riahi and her husband were driving in Alexander County, Virginia late one night when the car started sliding on a flooded road. The overflowing waters of nearby Duck Creek lifted the vehicle up and turned it around as the driver struggled to regain control. When water began going inside the couple exited the vehicle in hopes of reaching safety, but the flood instantly overpowered them and swept them away. Nearby resident Jerry Petraea overheard Lisa's husband crying for help and found him clinging onto a tree not far from the accident site. Petraea told Channel 9 that the stranded man was yelling, "Where's my wife at?" He said he'll never forget the man's terrified pleas. Emergency responders arrived not long after midnight and rescued Lisa's husband using a raft. At the time, he was unsure where Lisa was. Her body was later discovered 2.2 miles from where the driver was rescued after a 12-hour search. More than 7 inches of rain fell in just a few hours that night, causing the creek's water to rise 7 feet out of its banks. Lisa and her husband were on their way home from a family cookout at her father's house when they met the flash flood. 3. Dallas Jones. After serving the first 3 years of a 4-year sentence in an Indiana prison for a gun conviction, Dallas Jones transferred to a residential re-entry center, which helps prepare inmates for their transition back into the outside community. He was only a few months away from finishing his time in April 2019 when he removed his ankle monitoring bracelet while getting treatment at a hospital and fled from custody. By the time anyone noticed he was missing, he had a good head start and authorities were unable to locate him. Jones was still on the run 2 months later when he took part in a fatal Indianapolis shooting. Detectives tracked the 28-year-old down not long after the crime and arrested him on state charges of murder and unlawful possession of a firearm by a serious violent felon. He was also federally charged in connection to his escape. 2.5 years later, in 2023, Jones admitted to the gun charge and voluntary manslaughter as part of a plea agreement, and the murder charge was eventually dropped. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, which will be followed by a 27-month federal sentence for the escape. 2. Christian Dillard. Civilians in Bellingham, Washington were on edge after learning that an extremely dangerous and violent inmate almost escaped a secure unit at the Whatcom County Jail. 23-year-old Christian Dillard managed to kick open his cell's door after noticing that the lock experienced a mechanical failure. As he tried to leave the facility, deputies caught up and cornered him. They tried persuading Dillard to go back to his cell, but he refused. So, a special unit was sent out and backed the inmate up into a single-person cell, effectively thwarting his escape. In a statement, Sheriff Bill Elfo said that Dillard had previously committed a very serious assault against a corrections officer, resulting in a debilitating traumatic brain injury. He was being held on felony burglary and mischief charges when the escape happened. Dillard now faces additional charges of escape, assault, and trespassing, as well as malicious mischief charge for using a phone to break the window of his door. According to authorities, the lock on Dillard's cell was replaced in 2020 during a remodeling initiative after 2 proposals in recent years to build a new jail failed to go through. Dillard's attempted escape has revamped the campaign for a new facility, and officials are hoping their plans are accepted this time. If a proposed jail tax is approved, it would allow for the construction of a larger jail, along with units to accommodate mental health needs and substance abuse treatment. The plan also calls for a program aimed at reducing the jail population as much as possible by helping individuals avoid getting locked up in the first place. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Princesses in peril. In a disturbing case of suspected kidnapping dating back over 2 decades, the ruler of the United Arab Emirates was accused of abducting 2 of his daughters and holding them against their will. It all started in 2000 when Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum's daughter, Princess Shamsa, escaped from her father's home in Surrey, England. She stole a car on the massive estate and drove it to the edge of the property before setting out on foot. 2 months later, she was kidnapped off the street in Cambridge by armed men working for her dad after leaving a bar. Witnesses later remembered seeing her kicking and screaming as she was taken against her will. She was forced onto a helicopter and flown to France, then to Dubai on a private jet. She hasn't been seen in public since the abduction. Shamsa was unhappy, living under her father's thumb. A few months before she left her family's estate, she wrote a letter from behind palace walls about how she desperately wanted to escape. In it, she mentions how she tried to avoid running away by talking to her mother about what was bothering her. Shamsa was only 18 years old when she was last seen in public. Her current whereabouts and the status of her well-being are entirely unknown. She's now about 43 years old, and her absence has led to growing concerns about her safety. British authorities tried to investigate the princess's disappearance, but kept hitting roadblocks that stopped them from finding the answers they were searching for. A former employee of the royal family claimed that Shamsa was tortured, drugged and imprisoned in the years after her forced return to Dubai. The source only said that they saw Shamsa on 2 occasions, but described the princess as looking dazed and unhappy during the first sighting and emaciated and zombie-like in the second. In 2002, Shamsa's little sister Latifa also tried to escape from the royal palace in Dubai. The attempt was thwarted as well, and she was reportedly punished severely over a several-year period. According to a fact-finding report written by British head of family justice Sir Andrew McFarlane, she was held against her will, beaten and isolated for more than 3 years. During that time, she was reportedly denied basic necessities like hygiene items and was forcibly sedated. In 2018, Latifa fled Dubai with the help of a close friend. They drove to Oman, where they escaped on jet skis to a nearby yacht waiting for them. At some point, Latifa was removed from the boat, most likely by authorities who were cooperating with the UAE's search for her. As one of the richest royal figures, Sheikh Mohammed has virtually unlimited resources at his disposal and major influence among the other world leaders. Latifa's chances of successfully hiding from him for any period of time were unfortunately very low, especially considering how determined he was to find her. Initial reports claimed that Latifa was back in Dubai and now doing well, but international human rights groups started to question her well-being when a video she recorded before she fled the UAE popped up online. Latifa made the clip and gave it to a friend with clear instructions to release it if something ever went wrong during her attempted escape. In it, she described being under strict supervision at all times. Her movements were tightly monitored. She wasn't even allowed to leave Dubai, drive, or have her passport on her. After Latifa's recapture in 2018, activist groups pressured the UAE to give proof that the princess was still alive and well, but these requests went largely ignored. Former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Mary Robinson visited the royal family a little later that year, and she claimed that she was tricked into thinking Latifa had psychiatric problems and needed careful supervision. Latifa kept in contact with friends for a year and a half using a secret cell phone before going completely silent in 2020. Since then, enough photos of the princess have surfaced to show that she's still alive. A post from an unverified Instagram account thought to belong to Latifa says that she's free and independent, but naturally the concern for her well-being continues. Her failed escape has also reignited efforts to determine her older sister's whereabouts and health.
10. The Pawtucket Murderer. Shaylin Moran has pleaded guilty to the charge of first-degree murder in the brutal slaying of Cheryl Smith. A 20-year-old girl met Jack Dougherty online after recently breaking up with her boyfriend. The very first day they met in person, on December 31st, 2019, Jack proposed and the two got engaged. That's a little fast if you ask us, but hey, the day after, the pair decided that they were going to get revenge on her ex-boyfriend by going to his house, knocking on the door, and shooting whoever answered it. Definitely a sick and twisted way to devote your love. And lo and behold, that's exactly what they did. Shaylin and Jack went to Shaylin's ex-boyfriend's house, and when they knocked on the door, his 54-year-old mother answered. Without so much as a hello, Jack leveled a pistol and shot her dead where she stood. He unloaded the gun straight into her chest, and she later died at the hospital. This was some kind of sick love story. When police looked at Jack's phone, they saw that he had texted Shaylin after the murder, telling her, "Now this is for life." She responded by saying, "I'm yours forever, and you're mine." But the romance died just the next day when police tracked the pair down and arrested them. After the duo appeared in court, Shaylin, the murderous fiancé, was sentenced to life in prison. 9. Beaten with an ashtray. A 29-year-old woman from Decatur turned out to be a pretty violent fiancé. She was recently arrested after she got into a bit of an argument with her boyfriend when he began saying negative things about her mother. The crazy lady clearly didn't like people talking about her mom, because she retaliated by picking up a heavy ashtray and then beating the man with it. But this was no new engagement. Deputy Matthew Helfer said in an affidavit that the two had been engaged for nearly 7 years, and this was not the first time things got violent. The pair had been sitting in their living room when the conversation turned to the woman's mother. In a fit of rage, she beat her fiancé and then chucked the ashtray at his face so hard that it busted his head open. Ouch! She was then charged with domestic battery and ordered to stay away from the victim. However, last we heard, the couple has yet to break up. Apparently, the toxic couple thrives in the drama. 8. Child killers. A New York City Police Department officer and his fiancée have been charged in the brutal and cruel killing of the officer's 8-year-old son on Long Island. They've been accused of abusing the poor boy by trapping him in the garage while it was freezing cold outside. The child, third grader Thomas Volva, was discovered unresponsive at his home after the couple had forced him to spend the night in their unheated garage when the outside temperature was only 19 degrees Fahrenheit. The poor kid ended up dying from the freezing temperatures. Days later, his father and his fiancée were arrested, and both of them were charged with second-degree murder. It turned out this fiancée was not a very good stepmom. Even worse than the fact that they killed the poor child is that they tried to cover it up. When his father phoned 911, he told them that his son had fallen down in the driveway while waiting to go to school, and that they dragged him inside to perform CPR. The ensuing investigation revealed that Thomas was never in the driveway, and that he had even suffered head and face injuries that were likely the result of being beaten. Police were able to make the arrest and secure their case after they checked the home video footage. Prosecutors say each room of the house had a camera that was labeled. The camera in the garage was low pointed towards the floor with the label, "The Kids' Room." There was video evidence of Thomas and his brother sleeping on the garage floor with no blankets or pillows like wild animals. You'd think a cop would know better. 7. The pyromaniac. A woman from Milwaukee was recently arrested for setting her boyfriend's head on fire while he was asleep. Yeah, wow, if you're ever looking to get revenge, setting somebody's head on fire is definitely a good way to do it. According to the Milwaukee Police Department, they were called to the residence after receiving reports of a fire at the house. The very unlucky boyfriend was taken to the hospital with serious injuries, and his longtime girlfriend, Tuhunsti Marie Smith, was arrested in what police described as a domestic incident. She was charged with arson of the building, domestic abuse, and first-degree reckless endangerment. While in the hospital, the burned boyfriend told police that he had been in a serious relationship with his girlfriend for over 8 years. But he said that during the past 4 months, she had started to act a little odd. He said she was taking way more medicine than she was supposed to, and he was also worried that she was huffing paint in the basement when he wasn't around. All that paint huffing turned her into a bit of a psycho. She ended the relationship in a great blazing ball of fire. Would you stay with your significant other if they did something like this? Is forgiveness even an option? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 6. The Other Woman. A boyfriend in Washington made a very poor decision when he decided to bring his girlfriend to dinner with the girl she thought he was cheating on her with. His girlfriend had accused him of being unfaithful. So, to try and put her mind at ease, he invited his completely platonic female friend to dinner with him and his girlfriend. But then it backfired. Hard. The girlfriend got furious. They left the dinner early and went back to their apartment, and she went into a fit of rage. She scratched and pushed her boyfriend and knocked him over. And this guy was 63 years old, more than a decade older than his girlfriend, and more than old enough to know better. She poured wine on the floor, she smashed objects in the apartment, and it got so violent that the police had to come and take the woman to jail. The couple was supposed to get married, but now, after she was charged with malicious mischief and domestic violence, he's probably not going to go through with the proposal. 5. The Woman with a Battle Axe. A woman in Texas County was sentenced to spend 10 years in prison after she attacked her fiancé with a battle axe. Yeah, she basically tried to decapitate her fiancé with a huge battle axe, as if she were some kind of Viking warrior. Even worse is the reason why the attack happened in the first place. It all came about when the fiancé refused to make chicken for dinner. Instead of chicken, the woman's fiancé brought home sausage dogs for them to eat. This enraged the woman so much that she grabbed her battle axe and struck her fiancé in the right arm, nearly chopping his arm off above the elbow. Apparently, she really didn't like sausage. We don't know all the exact details of the pair's relationship, but we do know that when police entered the home, they found the woman, named Lisa Zamish, lying in bed with a battle axe and a handgun beside her. She was obviously a complete nut. But for some reason, the judge agreed that if she completes a 120-day program for her aggression while in prison, she can be released and put out on parole. Let's just hope the anger management works and she doesn't go back to the medieval store and buy another battle axe. 4. Too late on the proposal. A woman recently tried to sue her boyfriend after they dated for 8 years and he never proposed to her. If she was hoping to get a proposal in the near future, she probably should have waited a little while for making her lawsuit. The woman's name is Gertrude Ngorma from Zambia. She got so fed up with her boyfriend promising over and over again that they would get engaged that she took him to court. The couple had been dating for almost 10 years. They had a child together, and they were basically already married. But this guy was trying to be as cheap as possible and figured since they were already together, there was no need to go out and spend all that money on a ring. Oh yeah, and Gertrude alleged that he had been texting with another woman. This turned out to be a pretty bad move for the wannabe fiancé. The judge basically said the case was silly and there was nothing he could do. It's not illegal to text people, and it's not illegal to say you're going to get married to someone but never go through with it, even if it is a pretty nasty thing to do. 3. The Bachelor Funds. A fiancée in the United Kingdom was recently busted robbing her soon-to-be husband. Rachel Doran was engaged to marry Chris Mahoney. He had allowed her to take control of his bachelor party trip by giving her the funds and letting her set the whole thing up. He was supposed to be going to Ibiza in Spain with a group of friends, but when the friends arrived at the airport, they realized something was horribly wrong. Doran had stolen the money that she took from her fiancé and his 29 friends, printed them out fake hotel reservations, and then ran off with the money. In total, she managed to steal over $13,000. But don't worry, the thief didn't get far. Police tracked her down and arrested her. They also believe that she stole money from her own friends who had contributed to her own bachelorette party. Everyone involved is embarrassed and devastated. The wedding is off, and the woman is now a criminal. 2. The wrong ring. A woman in Florida has been arrested for beating her new fiancé with a 2x4. According to the Nassau County Sheriff's Office, they responded to an emergency call and found Enrique Bendejo standing in the street with a piece of wood, trying to beat her fiancé with it. The wood, which she had ripped off their front porch to use as a weapon, had big rusty nails sticking out of it. She was waving it around, trying to hit her future husband. When the cops finally calmed her down and spoke with her, she told him that she was angry about the way he had proposed to her. Apparently, they'd been arguing all day because Enrique didn't like the ring that he got her. It just wasn't fancy enough. The woman felt that she was slighted by her fiancé, even though she said yes to marrying him, and so she tried to kill him with a piece of lumber. She has since been charged with aggravated battery with a deadly weapon and ordered to stay at least 500 feet, 152 meters from her fiancé at all times. Does that mean the wedding is off? 1. Death by strangulation. In a savage drunken attack, a woman from New Orleans strangled her fiancé to death. But the way this all unfolded is nothing short of shocking. The woman told police that she killed her husband in self-defense after he got drunk and tried to murder her first. Laura Collins said she had no choice but to put her lover in a chokehold that ultimately led to his death. Wow, strong lady. But the police were suspicious from the very start. The dead fiancé was discovered with blood on his face and bruises all over his head, looking as though he had been hit by a car. And speaking of being hit by a car, Collins was already awaiting trial for killing a cyclist in a brutal hit-and-run accident back in January of 2020. This is clearly a dangerous woman that we're talking about. Thankfully, the evidence ended up proving that she was the one who provoked the fight and strangled her fiancé to death with full intent to cause harm. She was arrested and charged with his murder, though the murder of the cyclist is still pending and awaiting trial.
Number 10. SpongeBob Butt. Allegra Cole has a butt like SpongeBob SquarePants. At least, that's according to her. Wait, what? The model, in pursuit of her perfect rear end, got surgery to fix her, square butt. But unfortunately for her, it went terribly wrong and left her feeling like a freak. Of course, having a bit of a weird butt didn't interfere with Allegra's 1.3 million Instagram followers. Instead, she was praised as being brave for discussing her body confidence issues publicly. Because she has always felt a little insecure, she has always tried to perfect her imperfections. But it's important to keep in mind at this point that she didn't get famous for being normal, but for having ridiculously large proportions. To put it simply, it's her artificial assets that made her hugely famous and ridiculously wealthy. But besides just having a square-shaped butt, Allegra also has a lopsided chest. She referred to it in an interview as boob greed. After her first implants at 33, she continued going under the knife to get larger and larger implants until they began to be uneven. Now, one of them is way lower than the other, making it look like she had two lopsided balloons stuffed into her shirt. Some say she's courageous. Others say that her vanity has turned her into a kind of boob monster. According to the Daily Star, Allegra Cole currently has 4,600 cc implants in each side of her chest, as well as lip fillers, a Brazilian butt lift, and lots of Botox. Number 9. Cute nose for brain damage. A woman in Texas named Laura Avila has died from severe brain damage that she suffered during surgical complications. The Texan has been lusting over a better-looking nose. She hated her nose and wanted it to look cuter, and this vanity drove her to pack her bags and head to Mexico. She organized to have the nose surgery done at a clinic in Juarez. As well as the nose job, she was also going to get breast augmentation. After all, why just order pancakes when you can get the whole breakfast? Sadly, the surgeries did not work out like she hoped. Before she could even be cut open, the anesthesia caused her brain to swell and she died. After doctors realized there was a serious problem because of the anesthesia, they tried to cover it up. They put her in a medically induced coma following a heart attack so that she wouldn't suffer additional brain damage. When her fiancé arrived at the clinic to pick her up, doctors said they were still waiting for the anesthesia to wear off. But really, they were just trying to buy more time to see if the woman would survive. She didn't. By the time the doctors at the clinic actually called a real hospital for help, it was too late. The brain damage was irreversible, and there was no medical way to save Laura's life. They tried to keep her alive in a coma, but her heart gave out and her vitals went flat. Number 8. Lockdown weight loss. Louise Smith was a hairdresser in England. Like a lot of people in 2020, she gained quite a few pounds during the multiple lockdowns. Blame it on whatever you want. She had put on a bit of weight and was eager to get rid of it. But why work hard when you can just go to another country and get surgery? Louise became so obsessed with altering her appearance and shedding those lockdown pounds that she located the cheapest possible place to get surgery done. As it happened, Iran was the cheapest option for cosmetic surgery. It's important to note that Louise was working in Dubai. Iran is pretty close to Dubai, so it seemed like a simple enough decision. Fly over, get the surgery, go back to Dubai more attractive. But when you go for budget surgery, you get budget results. She died on the operating table, and because this is Iran, they never even gave a proper description of what happened. All they say is that she just simply died. To make matters even more tragic, still to this day, her family is struggling to get her body back to the United Kingdom. If you're wondering just how cheap cosmetic surgery is in Iran, we're talking about $500 for a nose job, arguably a fraction anywhere else. Number 7. The Ugly Duchess. The Duchess of Alba had so much plastic surgery, it became hard to tell if she was really from planet Earth. It's hard to even compare her to anyone else. She sort of looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and that's being nice. Whatever you think she looked like, we can all agree that she had way too much Botox. It also didn't help that her hairstyle made her look like a poodle, and that she wore clothes that probably belonged in the 1700s. Still, vanity didn't really have that negative of an effect on the Duchess of Alba. She lived a pretty long life. She was 88 and had a mega fortune of somewhere around $3 billion. Who cares if you look like a ghoul when you have enough money to buy the moon? Because she was so rich, we don't actually know what kind of surgeries she had gotten over the years. What we do know is that in her youth, she was absolutely gorgeous. But as she got older and tried to maintain that youth, she got uglier and uglier. Each time she got surgery, she came out even more hideous. She may not have had a single wrinkle on her face, but neither does a skeleton. And to be quite fair, that's exactly what she looked like. She may have been a direct royal descendant of England's King James II, but she looked like a monster. What do you think about the Duchess of Alba's over-the-top plastic surgery? Is this a perfect example of what not to do? And for that matter, what do you think convinces a person to go this overboard on their surgeries? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Number 6. Death for fashion. A Brazilian model dropped dead in the middle of a fashion show. It happened in Sao Paulo, Brazil, when the male model collapsed without warning on the catwalk. His name was Thales Soares, just 26 years old. Those attending the fashion show screamed in horror when they saw his legs give out underneath him. His body slapped down onto the runway, and he stopped moving. Paramedics did arrive pretty quickly. They were able to rush him to the hospital. By the time he got there, he was already dead. It's not every day that someone dies from fashion, so how did it happen this time? Some say he tripped on his shoelace and fell down, but there were also reports that once he was down, he started foaming at the mouth. A statement from the organizers of the Sao Paulo Fashion Week said that he had suddenly became ill during the show. The truth is that it seemed nobody really knows what happened to the model. He may have been sick, he may have starved himself to the point of exhaustion, or he may have tripped on his shoelaces trying to show off the latest fashions. Number 5. Too skinny to live. A model in Brazil died when she was just 21 after suffering from years of anorexia. This disorder is characterized by an irrational fear of becoming too fat. People with anorexia don't want to eat and are focused heavily on being as thin as possible. It's definitely a medical disorder, but it's also closely tied to a person's vanity and outlook on the world. Anna Carolina Resden worked all over the world as a model, weighing only 88 pounds. Standing at 5 foot 8 inches, 88 pounds was not healthy. But then again, Anna started her modeling career at the age of 13 after winning a beauty contest. So her vanity started at a very young age. Having that kind of beauty standard thrusted upon a teenager wasn't bound to go very well. As Anna grew older, she became more and more obsessed with her appearance. By the end of her days, she was battling both anorexia and bulimia. When she returned from a trip to Japan, her mother noticed that she was far too thin. When she begged her to eat, Anna refused. She ended up getting so weak that her mother forced her to go to the hospital, where doctors found she had a generalized infection. Anna was too thin and too weak to fight the infection, and so she died right there in the hospital. Number 4. Bitten by a pig. Michelle Lewin was bitten by a pig while trying to take photos for her Instagram account. The Venezuelan model traveled to the Bahamas for a bit of fun in the sun. When she was on the islands, she naturally needed to do a photo shoot in a bikini. It's vanity at its finest, and this time, it involved the teeth of a pig. As you can probably guess, pigs don't really care about your photo shoot. All they care about is food and mud. The 32-year-old model, for some bizarre reason, had chosen to go to the Big Major K Island, also known as Pig Beach. Locals know that the island is infested with feral swine. They swim in the water and rule the beaches. While Michelle was trying to get some nice snapshots of herself on the beach, a pig ran up and attacked her, bit her right on the butt, and she shrieked and ran away. That was when even more pigs started approaching the woman, undoubtedly curious and eager to take their own bites. Luckily for Michelle, she and her photographer were able to keep the pigs from knocking her over and biting her all over. It probably wouldn't have been that dramatic, but you just never know with wild pigs. If you're looking to do a photo shoot in the Bahamas, maybe try doing it somewhere where wild animals won't attack you. Number 3. Beautiful and exhausted. At 14 years old, a Russian model dropped dead from severe exhaustion. The tragedy happened while she was in China for a modeling assignment that was supposed to take 3 months. The girl's name was Vlada Zuba, and she collapsed into a coma after spending 12 straight hours working on a fashion show in Shanghai. What should have just been a little nap turned into a death sentence, and she never stirred out of her coma, and her heart gave out 2 days later. Doctors learned that she had been suffering from chronic meningitis, but because of her modeling contract, she was too afraid to seek medical treatment. She wasn't allowed to miss any work, even if it meant she would die. According to the New York Post, she was only technically allowed to work 3 hours at a time. After all, she was only 14, but this is a Russian national working in China, and so apparently all the rules were just thrown out the window. What Vlada was subjected to has been described as slave labor before she collapsed. Just minutes before she was expected to stride out onto the catwalk, she had a boiling fever and had begged to go to the hospital. The girl was forced to continue showing off the fashion, and then she died. Number 2. Blind as a bat. You might be familiar with Nadine Bruna. She's 32 and has over 1 million followers on Instagram. She also has the eyesight of a 90-year-old man. She ended up destroying her eyes in an attempt to get a permanent, real-life Instagram filter. Instead of using Instagram filters to turn her eyes from brown to light gray, she figured she would just get silicone implanted directly into her eyeballs to change their color. Prior to the surgery, her eyes were perfectly healthy, but now, her eyes are unable to adjust to light, making her extremely photosensitive, pretty much blind, and in a whole world of misery. She's another victim of trying a little too hard to look good. But before you think about going out and getting one of these surgeries yourself, keep in mind that retinal implants are illegal in the United States. Every doctor agrees they can cause irreparable damage, with Nadine Bruna being a perfect example. I mean, the surgery is basically just injecting colored silicone into the eyeball. It's definitely going to cause some problems. The worst part for Nadine is that the damage is irreversible. And number 1, backyard butt murder. A mother and daughter have gotten in some serious trouble for performing a backyard butt surgery that killed an adult film actress. They posed as plastic surgery professionals to lure in their customers. Their names are Libby Adam, 51, and Alicia Gales, 23. Both were arrested in August in California after the death of Carissa Rajpal. Just hours after the botched procedure, Carissa died in the hospital. According to the Los Angeles Police Department, these women had operated on a bunch of other people, but their luck ran out when the adult film actress died. They had no medical training, said Deputy Chief Alan Hamilton, and they didn't even have any proper experience. Honestly, if you just look at their mugshots, you'd think you'd be able to tell that these women were not plastic surgery professionals. As if performing the botched operation wasn't bad enough, when Carissa complained about suffering complications, the woman simply called 911 and then abandoned her to die. They took her cash and ran away. Because of this, they're being brought up on murder charges. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office ruled the death as a homicide by cardiopulmonary dysfunction caused by silicone injections. The women injected a bizarre cocktail of harmful chemicals, which ultimately led to the aspiring actress's death. Carissa had moved to the U.S. recently to chase her dream of becoming an adult film star. Sadly, the first step also turned out to be her last.
Chan, Mr. President, don't touch her. It's normal to experience a bit of jealousy in a relationship. Most people wouldn't blame a person for getting angry seeing some. Most of us, it would be a huge and exciting thing just to see POTUS live. This woman was lucky enough to stand alongside him. There was no limit to Cooper's excitement, but there was somebody in the crowd who wasn't really happy with this proximity. Her visibly jealous boyfriend, Mike Jones, jokingly interjected, "Mr. President, don't touch my girlfriend." And Obama very calmly said, "I wasn't planning on it." But it looked like Jones gave away his insecurity a bit too much. Obama could easily sniff out the jealousy around. And just to rub it in, the then POTUS hugged Aya and told her, "You're gonna kiss me." Give him something to talk about. Now he's jealous. Ugh, how embarrassing. This was a chance meeting that turned out to be something else, something that went on to become viral. Who knows how the conversation between Cooper and Jones went after the public spectacle. 9. The misleading text. Office romance, or perceived romance, can often be a source of relationship drama, especially when a partner's boss is of the opposite gender or a teammate they work closely with. Crystal DeValle was just 23 years old when she stabbed her 21-year-old boyfriend, Norberto Valentin. But why? Because she found him texting his boss and she assumed it was someone who was trying to steal her boyfriend away. What she failed to realize was that her boyfriend's boss was a man and not sexually interested in her boyfriend at all. So here's how things played out. In March 2015, when Norberto was texting his boss to and fro, she made the assumption he was texting another lady and couldn't take it. Blinded by jealousy, she didn't even take a moment to consider the consequences of what she was about to do, or verify her suspicions. Instead, Crystal stabbed him to death, right there. On further investigation, it was later found that Norberto was actually burning jealousy. A 19-year-old Diamini was found charred to death in a field in 2015. During the investigation, it was found that her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend and an accomplice were responsible, to 18 and 14 respectively. Mosupi's ex's new girlfriend, Diamini, and her beauty. What came out during the investigation was that Mosupi had made a strange demand of her who were divorced or pregnant. Unfortunately for Diamini, she was none of the above, and as a result, Mosupi felt that she had to kill her and get rid of the threat. 6. Husband divorces wife over animal affection. In 2013, an unnamed Saudi man decided to divorce his wife and claimed he had very strong grounds to do so. Curious to know what his wife was guilty of? Here goes. She kissed a horse. After posting a pic of her smooch to the animal, he found the picture on her social media where she is seen posing with a horse and planting a kiss on him. Despite her husband's anger, the wife expressed no remorse about the situation and was proud and happy about kissing an Arabian horse. She went on to express how beautiful the horse was. We hope she is now free to kiss as many horses as she wishes. Come to think of it, what is the one thing that is a deal breaker in your relationship? Looks like kissing the horse was it for this Saudi man. What's yours? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. 5. Crowdfunding to spy on girlfriend. When your partner is taking vacation without you, your mind might start to overthink. Who are they with? Are they having dinner with someone else? Such was the case for Azel Prother, a 25-year-old man from Maryland who couldn't help but think about what his girlfriend, 22-year-old Marissa, was going to be up to during her spring vacation in Miami. Since he couldn't afford to buy a ticket himself, he came up with a crowdfunding campaign on social media with a convincing sob story. Well, it must have moved people enough, for they actually helped fund his trip. He talked about his relationship with his girlfriend and how she was going on her spring break. The title of the campaign was Save My Relationship, and he elaborated on how unsafe Miami can be for a girl and that he wanted to make sure that she is safe out there. He added that he needs the public's help to fund the trip so he can ensure his girlfriend is safe and sound. And while you might think people might have trolled him, he actually managed to raise $360, which he used to buy a round-trip ticket to Miami and back. He even posted selfies of him and his girlfriend having fun. Maybe this one ended on a decent note, and the girl didn't get angry at him for crashing her vacation. Luckily for him, she considered this effort as a romantic gesture, but only Prother knew why he did what he did. This could have gone a different direction. A misunderstanding could have occurred and things could have gotten ugly. But thankfully, in this case, it all ended well. 4. Most jealous woman. When you don't trust someone, whatever they say seems like a lie. Even if it is true, you won't believe it. What does one do in that situation? Well, meet Debbie Wood, who is known to be the world's most jealous woman. She doubts her husband Steve Wood so much that she's jealous of any woman he talks to or is seen in pictures with. She checks his phone records, bank statements, emails, and the worst of all, she prevents him from seeing pictures of women in newsletters and magazines. Her husband Steve apparently doesn't say a thing and lives with all the conditions. Even if Steve leaves home for 20 minutes, she subjects him to a lie detector test on his return. She asks questions, like if he looked at another woman lustfully. It was determined that Mrs. Wood had been diagnosed with a condition called Othello syndrome. It is a psychological disorder that causes extreme jealousy despite no evidence of infidelity. 3. He loves me more. Wu Xia, a 21-year-old Chinese man, had broken up with his long-term girlfriend, June Tang, who was 20 years old. He later began dating another woman, 22-year-old Rong Zhao. During nearly 3 months of dating new girlfriend Rong, his ex, June Tang, kept harassing Wu to get back together, pleading with him and begging him to give her another chance. To stop all this, Wu decided to arrange a meeting with all three of them to talk things out, which soon turned into a colossal backfire. While Wu was simply trying to solve the dispute, the women ended up escalating things. They met at a place called Ningbo in eastern China's Zhejiang province. The situation almost immediately went from bad to worse. The girls started to argue about who was better for Wu. One comment that was made by the current girlfriend triggered the ex to jump into the river, trying to prove her point that he loved her more. The current girlfriend jumped too, to prove her point as well. Both were struggling to stay alive, begging him to save them. He was in shock and didn't know what to do. He then decided to call his brother for help and jumped in to save his current girlfriend. His brother called in the fire brigade, who helped bring the heartbroken June Tang out of the water. 2. Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias was convicted of brutally murdering her ex-boyfriend, Travis Alexander, at his home in Arizona in 2008, and it's one of the most famous cases of murderous jealousy in the U.S. In 2006, Arias and Alexander met at a conference held in Las Vegas, Nevada. They started to meet each other despite it being long distance, as he was in Arizona and she in Palm Desert, California. They got into a committed relationship, and 5 months later, they broke up and went their separate ways. However, they continued to maintain a sexual relationship. In June 2008, Alexander's body was found lying in the shower of his house, amid a pool of blood. He had received 24 stab wounds, his throat slit, as well as gunshot wounds. Investigators later found that this incident took place 5 days before they found the body, and they suspect the murder took place on June 4, 2008. While Arias initially claimed no knowledge, she quickly changed her story when she was confronted with the fact that her DNA matched the blood found at the crime scene. She claimed that she was attacked first by 2 intruders who were masked. Her story changed multiple times, and during her trial, Arias testified that she ended up killing Travis Alexander, her ex, on the account of self-defense, claiming sexual and physical abuse. Her stories were not consistent with the evidence, including some photos found in a digital camera, and she was ultimately found guilty of first-degree murder and was issued a life sentence in prison. Before that, 2 juries had argued that she should be given the death penalty, but the judge settled for life in prison. She tried to come across as a victim. She testified for 18 consecutive days, saying the same story. But despite all the extra drama, she was still found guilty. She was given life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. 1. Triggering jealousy gone wrong. Sarah Bramley, a 29-year-old who reveled in the drama of having both David Saunders and Michelle Lawson vying for her attention, made a choice that ultimately led to murder. She sent an intimate photo of herself to Saunders. It was an image of her performing a sex act on Lawson. This led Saunders to such a violent fit of jealousy that he ended up stabbing Lawson through the heart with a kitchen knife. Bramley was also jailed after she admitted she had encouraged the commission of an offense. And meanwhile, Saunders was jailed for life. Investigators revealed that it was a series of events that led Saunders to decide to kill Michelle Lawson, and that Bramley had tried different ways to trigger Saunders. Thanks for watching. Do you have any stories of jealousy that you think deserve a spot in a video like this? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 10. Mr. President, don't touch her. It's normal to experience a bit of jealousy in a relationship. Most people wouldn't blame a person for getting angry seeing someone flirt with their partner or touch them. However, in some cases, the jealousy goes way too far. In 2012, during the presidential election, a woman named Aya Cooper ended up standing at a voting machine right next to President Barack Obama. While for most of us it would be a huge and exciting thing just to see POTUS live, this woman was lucky enough to stand alongside him. There was no limit to Cooper's excitement, but there was somebody in the crowd who wasn't really happy with this proximity. Her visibly jealous boyfriend, Mike Jones, jokingly interjected, "Mr. President, don't touch my girlfriend." And Obama very calmly said, "I wasn't planning on it." But it looked like Jones gave away his insecurity a bit too much. Obama could easily sniff out the jealousy around. And just to rub it in, the then POTUS hugged Aya and told her, "You're gonna kiss me. Give him something to talk about." Now he's jealous. Ugh, how embarrassing. This was a chance meeting that turned out to be something else, something that went on to become viral. Who knows how the conversation between Cooper and Jones went after the public spectacle. 9. The misleading text. Office romance, or perceived romance, can often be a source of relationship drama, especially when a partner's boss is of the opposite gender or a teammate they work closely with. Crystal DeValle was just 23 years old when she stabbed her 21-year-old boyfriend, Norberto Valentin. But why? Because she found him texting his boss and she assumed it was someone who was trying to steal her boyfriend away. What she failed to realize was that her boyfriend's boss was a man and not sexually interested in her boyfriend at all. So here's how things played out. In March 2015, when Norberto was texting his boss to and fro, she made the assumption he was texting another lady and couldn't take it. Blinded by jealousy, she didn't even take a moment to consider the consequences of what she was about to do, or verify her suspicions.
Thanks for watching. If a friend ever escaped from jail and called you for help, how would you react? Would you consider helping them? Refuse to help but also not report them to the police? Or would you cooperate with law enforcement, since it would probably be in their best interest to face legal issues head-on, instead of running from them? Let us know in the comments below.